Okay, it's 6:30. I call the April 25th Planning Board meeting to order. And I would ask you all, if you have your cell phones with you, please silence them. And of course, I haven't, and it's in my purse, and it'll go off. You just wait, okay? But if you can, thank you. The first thing on the agenda is public comment, and this is if anybody seated here wishes to bring something to the attention of the board that is not on the agenda tonight. And if so, please go up to the podium and state your name and tell us what you would like us to know or to consider at a future meeting. Is there anybody who wishes to say anything to that effect? Okay, I see nobody. We have the minutes, March 28th and April 11th. Mr. Clerk?
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of the minutes of March 28, 2023 as corrected, and the minutes of April 11th, 2023 as written.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. 6-0. Excuse me, first on the agenda, public hearings.
Notices?
Not yet. Okay, as we go through.
I thought it was written there for notices, I'm
No,
sorry.
just to remind, okay. First on the agenda, the applicant, Partition Commissioner Edward Foley Vaughn, Esquire, and Todd Rainey Jr., trustees of OBR Realty Trust, definitive plan application to subdivide a 10.3 acre parcel of land into 2 buildable lots and 1 non-buildable lot, 336 Old Barnstable Road, and lots 2 through 6 Adeline's Way. And we have a request here for a continuation. Please accept this as a request for a further continuance of the above referenced matter from April 25th, 2023 to June 13, 2023. The reason for this request is that the applicant does not yet have the stormwater calculations needed to comply with the planning board's regulation concerning stormwater and drainage. May I have a motion to that effect, please?
So move.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, the applicant, Michael Galasso, special permit application for parking within 5 feet of a property line at 545 Main Street. And again, the applicant has requested a continuance of this matter to May 23rd. Let's extend our hearing date until May 23rd, so we have hopefully adequate time to secure the off-site parking, because it seems clear you wouldn't support moving ahead with a conditional approval subject to us securing off-site parking. And they are also agreeing to extend the deadline until May 31st. May I have a motion to that effect?
So move.
Second.
Moved and
Until
seconded.
what date?
Which one?
May 31st.
May 31st, extended to. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just for clarity
Yes.
purposes, is that a motion and an approval for both the special permit
For both, yes,
and the site plan review?
yes.
Very good.
They're all covered in the same request, and it
Thank
seemed easier to do it that way. Thanks. So now we move on to a public meeting. And Michael Galasso, this is the same thing that
Right.
we just voted to continue. So, just in case, that's why Jed was asking for clarification. Next, the applicant is ASD Cape Cod Holdings LLC, site plan review application to install large-scale ground-mounted solar arrays at 41, 42, 48, and 59 Theater Drive and 0 Boxbury Hill. And then they give the huge long map numbers here, which I will not read. And
Public notice.
there is a public notice on this. Paul?
The public notice was published on April 7th, 2023. 37 abutters were notified by regular mail.
Okay, thank you. And Jed, do you want to go into this a little bit as to,
I certainly can.
okay, thank you.
So for the record, Judd Cornock, Town Planner, this application and this project, because it exceeds the thresholds for Cape Cod Commission Development of Regional Impact Review, and because it's constructing more than 40,000 square feet of outdoor space, the board is under a mandatory referral requirement. Therefore, you, as the board, need to vote to authorize the planning staff to refer this matter to the Cape Cod Commission for that review. And that's what your action will be tonight. Simply to vote to refer that. And we would hold off on taking any public comment because you're not actually opening a hearing. What you're doing is just referring this matter to someone else. They will have a public hearing component. They will be taking public comments during their matters. Once they finish up their development of regional impact review and their process, that information will then come back, the applicant will come back to this board, and you will then open up your process to take public comment and review the application as they present it at that time. So for tonight, it's simply to vote, authorize the planning staff to refer it to the Cape Cod Commission.
John?
Just a clarification. Judge said that this will be referred to the Cape Cod Commission, and they will have public hearings.
Yes.
And for anyone that's here, that may be here for this, how will they know when the public hearings are gonna be held?
I believe that they also notify the abutters as we do, but we can look closely into that. And when, actually, what we can do as part of that process to just fully be transparent, any of the abutters that we notified for this mailing, when we receive notification from the Cape Cod Commission that they'll be holding a public hearing, we can also share that information with those abutters, that we have on file as well.
But you don't have to be an abutter to attend those hearings.
That is correct. Anyone in the public can attend those hearings.
And then after they make their decision, it will come back to us and we'll start all over.
Correct.
Okay, with their referral.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
What's the time frame for doing that, do you know?
Our understanding is that Cape Cod Commission review takes approximately 6 months.
Wow.
Yep. So the process is you vote, authorize us to send it along, we send it to them, they schedule a hearing, they take public comment, they go through a review just like you will. And then when they finish that matter, then they refer it back to the planning board, and then you can open up your hearing as you would normally tonight.
So the time clock started when they filed their application. It stops when we refer it to the Cape Cod Commission. When we get their referral, the time clock for our process starts again. So while
At
they're
0 hour.
No, it starts.
starts-
It starts from however long this was since the day they filed till now. And then, so they have a 90 days total. So let's say it's been 15 days, they still have 75 days when they come back, whenever that is.
Thank you.
I know it's been longer than 15 days, so.
Yeah.
So there's no discussion tonight at all then?
No. And the reason for that is because the Cape Cod Commission will have their own process for which they will have public comment.
You all can see why I wanted our staff to introduce this
Yes.
because of all the intricacies of it.
And it's because this is a development of regional impact.
That's correct.
It reaches that threshold.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
And what was the threshold? You said something about 40,000 feet
40,000 square feet,
of
so,
excavated land or building? Building's 10,000 feet, right? I'm just trying to understand the thresholds.
sure.
So the 40,000, is that earth moving or?
I'll read you the section of the
Yeah, I
enabling
just
act.
want to understand the threshold, that's all.
Yep. So it's section 3E subsection I, or triple I. For outdoor uses, new construction or development that has a total project area greater than 40,000 square feet. So they've met that threshold and exceeded that threshold, therefore they're under a mandatory review requirement from the Cape Cod Commission.
Looks like from the drawings, about 135 acres. Very, very big site.
It's quite sizable, right. So a
That's-
total project size is 140-ish acres, and I think the arrays cover approximately 57 acres.
Well, I added up the 3 items they have in the drawing, it's almost 135 acres, and that's a big site.
Yep. Yep.
Thank
And
you.
so we tried to make that as as clear as we could with the public hearing notice was that, you know, we weren't gonna be taking any public comment simply because that will happen later in the process.
Okay, does our board have any further questions?
Thank you.
Okay, may I have a motion that our staff refer it to the Cape Cod Commission?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. Moving on, next on the agenda is an applicant, David Zenga, with a preliminary plan application to create a one-lot subdivision at 0 Beagle Lane, map number 3923014003. And is there anybody here for the applicant?
Applicants.
Please. Oh, there's a notice too. Go ahead, you can get up there.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay.
I was previously an abutter to this property
okay,
across the street, so,
thank you.
thank you.
Paul?
A public meeting notice was published on April 7th, 2023, and 7 abutters were notified by regular mail.
Thank you. Okay, now, Mr. Zagna.
Okay. So, my name's Dave Zenga. I'm here representing myself,
Speak closer to the microphone. Thank you.
representing myself and my wife, Grace. Very recently, a piece of property on Beagle Lane went up for sale. It's currently owned by a woman named Jen Drisick is her last name. We were successful in negotiating a price to purchase the parcel, but as she lives in Maine, part of our understanding was that we would take the parcel through the subdivision process on her behalf and then finalize a sale. So our hope is that we're able to finalize that sale after, subsequent to your decision, if the parcel is deemed buildable. It's our belief that the lot is an acre .4 in size. It's in and amongst an area where there are at least, I think, a dozen other homes off of a dirt way, Beagle Lane, which comes off of Route 28. The lot itself is, I won't say substantially, but it's fairly larger than any of the other lots that currently support homes in the area. And our hope is to build just a single-family home on this acre .4 parcel. We've been working with John Doyle, who is a local engineer in town, and I believe is the gentleman with his dad that actually did the original A&R plan back in the 80s. And he's the one that came together with this plan with the idea that we extend an easement in the front, should the roadway want to be widened at some point later. We've also incorporated a drainage easement in the front of the property, as I don't believe anywhere on Beagle Lane there is existing drainage. Our plan is not to overbuild. We'd put a similar-sized house, single-family house, on what we consider to be a fairly large lot. And this plan obviously is a preliminary subdivision plan. We were just hoping to get in front of you folks with this plan because we thought, first of all, it's currently zoned agricultural, but it does meet all of the other single-family requirements in the town of Falmouth, even if the easement in the front is utilized to widen the road at some later point. There is water coming down Beagle Lane, which we could tie into. It's substantially sized. I think it's 12-inch. So there's certainly enough water to provide water to the home. Don't know what else. If you have any questions for me, John unfortunately couldn't make it tonight. He had an emergency, but would be available for consult at some later point in the very near future if questions do arise that I can't answer.
Thank you. Does anybody on the board have questions at this point?
I drove out there today, and I'm wondering how you got a 12-inch water line there. I only have a 6-inch in front of my house. There's only a couple houses out there.
I certainly didn't see it with my own eyes, but I saw it from the feedback from the town fathers.
It's a nice parcel. Nice parcel.
We think so as well. We think it's a perfect parcel for a single family. And we certainly don't want to overburden the neighborhood. We thought a single-family house would fit in nicely.
Bob, do you have anything?
No.
Jeffy?
Nope.
Do you want to talk about the subdivision regulations in terms of what may be required for the applicant in a definitive plan?
Well, I think we should.
Yeah.
But would you prefer to do this now, or
Allow
ask if
public.
anybody in the public has any comments or questions on this particular subdivision and the lot that he's referring to develop? Yes, ma'am. Please come up and state your name.
Elizabeth Cant, and I live off Beagle Lane.
You can move the mic down a little. Yeah, it's quite bendable.
Okay, my name is Elizabeth Cant, and I live off Beagle Lane. This lot, it has been my understanding since I moved there many, many years ago, that this lot is unbuildable. On what basis was it designated unbuildable?
That was the original covenant that went with the subdivision of the land. So
And
there
what
is
was,
a
what was the covenant between, is that is a deed restriction, or is that an agreement between the town and the owner?
It's usually a deed restriction, but it's not a permanent, because the way this, my understanding is, the way this covenant was written, Melinda,
Thank you.
the way the covenant was written, it holds until the subdivision has, the appurtenances put in. In other words, a roadway and the proper drainage and all of that. So it becomes an official subdivision according to our subdivision rules and regulations.
Oh, I see.
So it's not like you would consider an undersized, permanently unbuildable lot, like 2,000 square feet or something like that, that might not be. So it's not permanent, but it can be considered permanent at this point unless things are done. Is there anyone else who wishes to comment or question? Yes, ma'am.
Gretchen Clausen, Beagle Lane. I feel that granting this permission for this subdivision would just create a precedent for more people who own property along Beagle Lane to want to develop their property. As everybody knows, the state of Beagle Lane is a deplorable condition in terms of a road. I just don't see that there would be any benefit to our neighborhood to have this be going through. Not to mention that the intersection of Beagle Lane and T-Ticket Highway is one of the most dangerous intersections in all of Falmouth. To add more traffic to that, I think is unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to comment? Okay. Now, having heard that, we need to bring it back to, I think, discussion that should be read probably by Jed or Melinda or both together.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I think there's some elements that you may want to perhaps discuss with the applicant. First and foremost, I think one of the abutters just mentioned it, the condition of the street. So in a traditional subdivision, which albeit this one is certainly not traditional, but a subdivision nonetheless, our design standards and your rules and regulations indicate that the width of the layout shall be 44 feet, and the width of the pavement, including two 12-inch berms, would be 22 feet. And so as you can see on the preliminary plan on the screen and also in your packet, that it's a gravel surface at this point, and the width of Beagle Lane varies. Also, the condition of it varies. So it may behoove us or you to have that conversation with the applicant to indicate your preference for what that might look like in the future, because as you know, the subdivision rules and regulations allow for waivers to be filed. And it might be a good conversation to talk about what waivers you might be inclined to grant or not grant, but give the applicant a little bit more information about streets. So that's just a starting point. There's also, obviously, the formalized drainage system. That's a cornerstone of the subdivision rules and regulations, as are the idea of sidewalks, street trees, and streetlights. So things that an applicant may want to know a bit more information about what you might be looking for this unusual subdivision.
I think we'd have to underscore unusual, because normally when there's a subdivision, it happens.
Correct. You're actually subdividing property and creating lots, and this is a different situation. And so, like I said, you may want to just have that conversation about what you'd be looking for, or what you might encourage the applicant to consider.
Okay?
Is this a Lewis Lane situation?
That's my concern.
I don't think it's as bad as
Yeah.
Lewis Lane was. I've driven the street many times. Not the same. And there's there's a lot of side streets off this.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
not-
just wondering about placing a burden on one property owner that,
Yeah, if we did too much, if we had to make them, like, what, pave the whole road and do everything.
yeah, you know, where do we stop with that?
That's a discussion we have to have.
That's what we're trying to do right now.
Well, I guess I'd want to see some improvements to it. It's got a proposed drainage easement there. I mean, if the street doesn't have drainage, maybe that's a plus that they could put it in.
Probably would help
Yeah,
preserve
Maybe-
the roadway.
at least give this portion that he's in control of. He can't do stuff on other people's land.
Right.
But what he can do, we should see how that would enhance
Well,
the way.
do we look at that 24-foot wide easement as a turnout, or like we talked about on other properties where, in order for people to get by, or,
There's a street here.
right? And you can't have the driveway right opposite that street
No.
either.
We'd have to see where the driveway is, yeah, that would be important.
But, you know, the issue becomes two-way traffic, and I know people have been dealing with that for decades.
Well, do you all, I don't know who was on the board at that time when we took up People for Cats.
Yeah, I was,
I was here too.
yeah.
Were you here, Paul?
No.
Okay, so the three of us were here. And remember how we insisted that they pave just where their driveway was going in because it would have sufficient traffic to warrant that?
Yeah,
And the road was in pretty tough shape.
yeah.
It's not in bad shape now.
Okay.
Oh, they're in very good shape. In fact, I drove around both sides of that parcel today. I mean, it's dirt roads going back, but the road coming in is in reasonable
Not
good shape.
potholed and stuff.
No, it's good shape. It's going very nicely.
But you look at the position of the utility poles, though.
You know, because we're using the subdivision control law, we're kind of putting a burden on
Yeah,
this
I mean,
developer to do
they're-
something, and that wouldn't be fair to do that.
Pam, do you have?
No, I mean, I think my concern is the variability of the road. You know, it doesn't look very, I mean, with variable widths and I think I have to take a drive up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been down there.
I know, it's been a while since I have too, so.
I think the
So we're
applicant.
talking about have a site visit?
I know what you're gonna see.
Maybe
I was there
helpful.
today, I spent some time riding around there on both sides,
I'm familiar, I'm just wondering
and
if we need to see
he's
it.
showing
Yeah, it sounds like,
space for widening of the road, so he's
Uh-huh.
accommodating that part of it, and he has drainage too. So I'm not sure we have to do a lot more than that, frankly. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, like I said, the applicant has the ability to ask for waivers. So what I'm hearing is perhaps the traveled surface doesn't necessarily need to be paved.
Right.
That I'm picking up that indication that perhaps the drainage system as it is now, which I assume is just, country drainage,
none?
can perhaps remain as is. Is that something that you'd want mitigated in some way? I'm not sure exactly how, but I'm sure there's ways.
Well, dirt roads don't normally have what we consider drainage for roads.
I've seen some interesting ways of dealing with that.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, the
Again,
other
not a
part of it-
formalized
The other part of it too, we're looking at a subdivision.
Right.
It's a very large lot, and there's only one house going on it. So it's not like there's gonna be a lot of traffic coming in because of this particular development.
Okay, but then we come to the point of, now we have another little nibble, and another little nibble, and another little nibble. We've got 7 lots in here. And so how do we control those little bites at it?
I think we should try to make it better every time we do one.
Yeah.
By doing what? That's
Well, I
what I'm
think
trying to get
It
at.
looks like they're proposing a drainage solution here. And the widening, potential widening of it too, right there. Isn't that what I'm reading here?
Yes, but no, it says an easement.
It
So
says
that
for
doesn't
road
necessarily
widening and
mean-
drainage easement. It says a drainage easement and widening easement, so.
I understand,
I'd
but it's
say
an
road widening.
easement.
Right.
Okay, may we ask
Sure.
would you like to ask the applicant what is meant by easement and what he is thinking of?
Sure,
Please.
so I think, personally, I wouldn't even know the difference between the two, but we'd leave it up to you folks. I think what John did was he sequestered that space such that if the road needed to widen at some later point, and to your point, if other property owners in this area decide if we're given approval to do the same, my hope would be that they would be willing to do the same things we would, and that would open up the road to the 40 whatever foot width that's required. I appreciate the fact that you guys are considering the fact that we're only looking at one. And my fear was that, yes, it would be great to have a paved 40-foot road. We don't have the ability to do that, not only financially on this particular property, but we don't have the right to go and ask others to give up that right of way to widen the road, which is why we've tried to provide the few things that we've done to try to make the situation different. I guess what I'm saying is if the board decided that it was to be a covenant or an easement or a land taking, we'd be happy any which way you folks decide. And we've looked at the property. Property would still meet all of the current requirements for frontage, area, and all of the things that would be required, even if that space was deducted from the property.
Okay, thank you. My comment to that is, I look at it as an easement, but I also look at how many people who own homes and they plant out into the town's easement, or whatever you want to call it, the right-of-way, because it'd be sort of like a right-of-way that we would be granting here. And how do we definitively keep that from happening so that when and if and when, other lots are developed, we can keep that as a clear right-of-way so that we don't have any distress with people saying, but I've got this huge ancient tree there that I planted 40 years ago, you know? And I don't know how we can condition that. That would be a concern I would have, that in fact be kept inviolate.
Hey, Jed, do you think you could pull it up so we could see a satellite view?
Sure.
We have the tool right there. I think it'd be helpful to look at, see if there's any trees.
Yeah,
And that's what I was trying to get
I
at.
don't know, but
I
it's
wanna know what's there.
also when and if they get a permit to build, that they might be inclined to landscape that area. I think the very best they could do would be to keep it as lawn, so that there are not some specimen trees and so on that would be precious. Well,
So this is the subject property, also known as Lot 3. I don't think we have street view in that area. No, it appears not. But, you know, I've been up and down that road, and it's, I mean, the whole lot is vegetated, and there's trees right up to the edge.
Would you click on the contours for a second? I just want to see what this, how flat the road is. Road looks pretty flat.
Yep. Yeah, it's relatively flat.
We can, it doesn't look like there's any rise at all coming all the way in.
And I think the pavement ends
Right there, where
Yeah.
Beagle Lane is. Where
Approximately
Beagle
here.
Lane.
So it could be something that, you know, because, as you mentioned, there's several properties back here that could be essentially doing the same thing at some point. Perhaps if I'm hearing correctly, that, you know, with each one of these potential future developments, essentially a sliver of the property gets transferred to the town to create that 44-foot right-of-way necessary for Beagle Lane. And again, that's just the space that a roadway could eventually land in or be within. It's not necessarily the surface of the road. So your roadway would not be 44 feet wide. It would just be the land set aside for a roadway. And perhaps you could handle it in that way. So when this one, you carve off that piece, the next one, so on and so forth, and you eventually get to a 44-foot right-of-way for the whole stretch of Beagle Lane. And then the other item in the subdivision rules and regs are items like street trees and street lights. Again, it seems like a fairly rural area, if you want to use that term. So I'm not sure if you want to consider the idea of street lights. I'm not sure if there's any down in that area, but I didn't see any when I was down there.
What we've done is driveway lights and
Yeah.
some
Yep.
development.
Have him figure out where the driveway goes and put a light at the end of the
Okay.
driveway.
And if I was hearing correctly, you would rather a driveway be opposite, for example, another lot versus be opposite a street opening? Is that?
In our practice,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, the big question I have is, how do we guarantee that one house gets built on this and it doesn't get sold as a 40B, this property? We have no control over
Don't
that.
think there's ever a guarantee of that.
9 acres of,
even if we're told
Yeah.
it's not gonna happen, it could happen.
yeah. Well, we found covenants don't hold either. We got burned big time on one of these. And I'm still crispy from it.
It's a fact of life, Bob.
I know.
We can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and I just want to, you know,
Yes,
for-
we can. We gotta get enough houses built so we get into the production plan, so we don't have 40B anymore.
Yeah.
That's our only recourse.
and perhaps just for the record, so, you know, folks in the audience and folks at home understand why we're talking about a one-lot subdivision. This is the A&R plan that was approved in 1982 and put on the plan, as you can see in this note, and I'll read it just for the record. At a meeting of the Falmouth Planning Board held on January 5th, 1982, it was voted that approval under the subdivision control law was not required because a waiver of frontage was granted under Section 81R Mass General Law, Chapter 41. This endorsement and waiver was granted only because, and subject to, the terms and conditions of the covenant executed by Frank Figueredo and dated January 7th, 1982, a copy of which instrument is made part of the plan and recorded herewith. And that covenant essentially said that, I'm trying to see if this note says it as well, any of these parcels, parcels 1 through 7 and parcel A, cannot be used for any other purposes other than agricultural unless such time that the planning board approves a subdivision plan of land. That's why we're here. Preliminary plan is being proposed as shown here for lot number 3.
Okay, thank you. So what it sounds like is, correct me if I'm wrong, that the board would like to see this happen, but with the appropriate covenant, not covenant, the appropriate, the word's escaping me, details in place that the area is kept free, deeded to the town, or however it's to happen, to that a wider road can be put in there.
I don't know if it could be deeded to the town, because
I
the
don't
town
think it-
would be responsible for the road. and
Yeah.
they're
Yeah,
not-
it's already private road, but I
Yeah.
think the easement,
That's right.
Pat, would work. I
The
think-
easement.
I think the easement is the proper.
Okay, the proper way of doing it.
Yeah,
So if you did that for each lot, then potentially there would never be pavement.
or it could be pavement if there was more lots and they wanted to widen it. I mean, someday, it could pave. I wouldn't say never.
Because
I
it
just
could
want
all,
to cover all the bases.
yeah, it could be that the residents there would like to see it paved and could join together to have it paved.
I
Sometime in the future.
do think it's worth noting that in the engineering referral, I believe this, yes, I believe Beagle Lane, so I'll just read it for the record. In the engineering referral, which was dated 4/14/2023, our engineering division makes note that a petition on file for the roadway acceptance with 62% of the abutters' signatures is on file with the engineering division. The owners of this lot did not sign the petition. Of course, you're under agreement, I believe. So the petition sits at number 23 in the current order of acceptance. So they're essentially 23rd on the list of roadways that may be accepted by the town at some future date.
Okay. The town doesn't accept very many roads each year from
Correct,
what we've seen.
correct.
One or two?
About. So Beagle Lane would be way down the list if 62% of the residents said, yeah, we want to see it paved.
Is it
And-
presently a private road?
It would be acceptance of a private road. And then it would become a Falmouth road. And Falmouth does not accept private roads lightly. They're-
Right, so it's just a consideration for the future, because as you know, in accepting a roadway, they would want it to meet all of the standards the town has, and currently, as it stands, it would not meet those standards.
So have I kind of stated the desire of the board right now from the brief discussion we've had? You want the staff to put something together that we can look at?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then this will come back at our next meeting?
Mhm.
Okay, and that is May 9th,
May 9th.
okay? So we will take this up again on May 9th, and our staff will put together something to resemble what we have discussed tonight, and then we will discuss that further.
And just for clarity's sake, what I'm hearing from you is the strict compliance with the rules and regulations is not quite what you're looking for. It's more of a flexibility situation. So street trees, street lighting, those are not things that you think are, at least at this stage,
From my point of view, what we've also said is that we would like to, so far as possible, preserve the rural nature of Falmouth. And so this goes, without paving paradise, it goes to the preservation of the rural nature.
What was that we did last year, the street in West Falmouth, Fire,
Frederick?
yeah, was it Fredericks, yeah. They had to cut a few branches, trees, do
Right.
a little work, made it better.
So the fire truck could go
Yeah.
through.
Made it, but we didn't make them pave the whole road.
No,
They did get our house.
Mm-hmm.
So we've done this before.
and I don't know that that would be necessary along Beagle Lane.
No, I don't know, just
Yeah,
whatever, I think it's important that some level of improvement be made every time we
yeah.
move closer to what we should have on the street.
Well, and
Not
these people
everything-
don't know what we're talking about,
Right.
but the fire department, so that they have access, the emergency vehicles have access, it has to have a certain height to the trees and a width of the road that the branches have to be trimmed to.
Could you, I don't know, this is something new, so I don't know, but each time something got developed, a new lot got developed, could all of the lots that have been developed since this time be required to all together do an improvement? So not to put the onus on just one lot, and then if the next lot comes, not to put just the onus on them, but that they have to get together as a group to do something, like grade it or pave it eventually or whatever, I don't know, according to the regulations. But, something along the lines of, instead of putting it on each person that comes before them, I don't know if you can do that or not. If you
I don't
can
either.
do it as a group for everyone that's come since this date, who's gonna build on that road, if they have the responsibility to each time do a little bit of something. Instead of the last person that goes down there, we see that a lot of improvements need to be made or something of the sort, and then it's all put on one person.
Actually, them giving this easement is a model for going forward, that anybody wants to do the same thing, and eventually so the road could have that
Yep.
capability in the future. That would be something.
Mhm.
That would,
Probably be better, because I don't know, like you, Melinda, whether you
Right.
could even obligate people in the ephemeral future there.
There's been some discussion about a site visit. Is there interest in the board going out to look at it? I don't know what you're gonna see, really.
Yeah, I don't,
I mean, the site is very wooded. It's right by the post office. You drive in, there's no problem getting in and out.
right.
So I don't know if a site visit is really necessary.
I don't think
I'm
so.
glad I
I
went.
only thought that maybe Pam, I'm familiar with it, I don't need to go, I know the street
I
well.
don't need to go
Right, but you know
anymore.
what, if I drive up there, then I'll become familiar with it.
Okay. Why don't you just drive up there then?
I think I'll just drive up
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
and become familiar.
Yeah.
It's an easy
That
road.
would make a difference. Actually, if you go back there, the road goes way back in a dirt road. I got lost in there once. It goes way,
Oh my
way back.
gosh.
I drove
All
there.
around, connects to another, it's way out there. It's like, it's unbelievable how far that little path goes out to the woods. I don't know if it's meant to be drivable way out there.
All the more of an argument to keep it rural as much as we
Right,
can.
but this part was pretty straight and clear.
Yeah, but he's offering to put an easement there.
Yeah.
But any road widening is gonna depend on the neighbors.
Yes,
Yeah.
would need an
They
easement.
have big sections on the, I guess, the north side there that they have to cooperate to do that. So
I think
it's
that's a
not,
great idea.
not the burden on this particular applicant. Shouldn't be.
A comment was raised about the intersection of 28 and Beagle Lane. Did you?
There's no, I have not seen a problem there.
It's outside their control.
Why don't you go up there?
Have.
Hey, Pat, I'll pick you up.
I'll drive.
I mean, I can show you.
Well, isn't Cumberland Farms right there?
It's a very nice area, it really
the post
is.
office.
Well, this is, I recognize one of the names here, the people, I thought they owned the land that Cumberland Farms went on, what's his name? It's a different name.
Is it the post office and the veterinarian?
Right,
Oh,
yeah,
it's, yeah,
that's what it is.
Frisoko, the ones that own,
Yeah.
So that's the intersection
Okay.
in question.
oh, it is, okay.
So this is
The
access
post office
for the
that's
post
there.
office, and this is the actual drive or Beagle Lane itself.
I mean, pulling out there from anywhere is a pain,
And in the summer, it's
Yeah.
more painful.
unless you're going right. Because then it's just scoot out, but.
Go and sort of come out this way. I wasn't suggesting that, you do any improvements here, but I would note that, this entranceway here is a little tight. Again, I'm not sure how far you would like the applicant to sort of look into making improvements, if any at all, possible, but it certainly is a little tight coming in and out of there. I will note that I'm not sure we've gotten a referral from our fire department as of yet. So what we can do is just double down and make sure that we get one before the next hearing date, so that we get their opinion on that as well.
Yeah.
Jed, how wide is that when you say it's a little tight?
I'd estimate that to be anywhere between 14 and 16 feet,
Yeah.
but I didn't measure it, so it's just an
See, when you
estimate.
say 14 feet, I say, oh, that's our road, you know?
Right.
So it puts it in context for me. Just a minute. Okay.
Like a mint.
Okay. And ma'am, you wanted to add to your comment, I think?
At the entrance,
For Pam, not for me. Ready? For Pam.
at the entrance, Beagle Lane is 11 point something feet wide. There was a lot of talk about Beagle Lane and the road when People for Cats wanted to move in there. I didn't have time to go and copy off the stuff that I was able to manage to dig out. But there was a fair amount of discussion. I can try to provide you with some of that. Or you can probably get your hands on it easier than I can. There was one planning board meeting where they suggested to the Board of Appeals to not approve it because of the condition of the road and the width of the road. There's also a water main that runs under Beagle Lane that was installed in 1929, I believe. I wonder what that looks like now.
Thank you for that additional information. I appreciate it. I'm pretty sure our files would have many of the comments that you're referring to as well. That water main is from 1929?
I think 1929.
Ooh. Okay, thank you, and we will then meet again over this at our next meeting. Yes, ma'am.
I know I'm speaking, requesting.
Please come up.
I was just wondering, when this topic is finished, I would like to speak on the next project. I have a very hungry 9-year-old that's being amazingly patient, but I think
my
it's almost done. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, we're done. What?
Is the applicant, you can come into the office and talk to the planning board.
Right.
But make sure we only do this one more time. Yeah, if you come in and.
Yep.
Resolve all the issues so we're all on the same page.
Okay, thank you. And now we move on to, I see Jessica just walked in too. The applicant is the 300 Committee Land Trust Incorporated Site Plan Review Application for a change in use from a single-family dwelling to a philanthropic use that will necessitate more than 2 parking spaces at 13 Thomas Landers Road. It looks like Kevin is going to speak.
Do we have a hand raised in the back or something?
Yes, ma'am?
Notices.
Can I please make a comment so I can leave? I'd hoped to do it at public comment time, but you said we couldn't do it if it was related to a particular project.
Yeah, we couldn't. Is there any problem with that? She's got a hungry 9-year-old?
Which project are you talking about?
This one.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're into it now, but Is that okay with you, Kevin?
Before he presents, you want to,
I understand hungry children, so.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
And
I'm actually shocked.
We do, would we
Fine.
interrupt just momentarily what you want to say, because we have public hearing, public notices.
Oh,
I'll be brief.
Yeah, I know, very brief.
Public meeting notice was published on April 7th, 2023, and 33 abutters were notified by regular mail.
Very brief.
Quick as it can be.
yeah, that was fast. My name's Megan Hanwalt. I'm one of the abutters. And I, before the Zelinskis moved out, Mrs. Zelinsky rescued two of my rogue goats by putting them in the kitchen until I came and got them. So just want you to be aware of that hazard. My comments are a couple. One is I'm concerned that this is just a small piece of a lot of changes that are about to happen. You've mentioned some of this in the previous project, like, is this the camel's nose? Is this the nibble? And I'd like to see a full plan of what's gonna happen before we can really understand the ramifications of turning this house in an agricultural zone into office spaces with 13 parking places. I know there's more, I'm just nervous about what that is. I'm disappointed that this is taking housing stock out of inventory. You're just talking about putting it into inventory. And you're also talking about, I didn't realize Beagle Lane was downtown, and you're talking about the rural nature of this. We're in Hatchville, East Falmouth. It's extremely rural and agricultural. Now we're putting an office building into that mix. It's kind of disturbing that we're removing both housing and agricultural land from the town resources. I strongly urge the 300 committee to make efforts to repair these losses by partnering with some of the many housing agencies in town, as well as Farming Falmouth. Two suggestions that might come to mind: by using that property to sponsor a tiny house project or community gardens to, kind of keep a little bit of what's been there. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Now go feed your son. And Kevin.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, Kevin Clower, I'm an attorney here in town with Ahmet Clower Law Firm, and I'm here before you tonight representing the 300 Committee Land Trust. They are the owners of this property at 13 Thomas B. Landers Road, former Zelinsky property. I'm joined tonight by their executive director, Jessica Ridenour, as well as Mike Duffany, and Ken Foreman was supposed to come here, but he couldn't quite make it, and Tom Bunker from BSS Design is with us as well this evening. We're seeking approval to use the existing existing structures on this property as offices for a philanthropic institution, the 300 Committee. It's a conversion of an existing single-family residence in the outbuildings. The project requires multiple levels of approval. We're seeking site plan review approval from you this evening, as the change in use results in a slight increase in the parking demands. We've also requested a special permit from this board, which I believe is scheduled for another evening,
Yes.
to allow parking in the front yard, because this property is all front yard. So we'll be seeking a special permit from this board for that, as well as a special permit from the zoning board, as that special permit allows for the use of agricultural property as a philanthropic institutional use, as well as an alternate parking surface, because we'd like to maintain a gravel parking. We don't see the need to pay paradise, to borrow Pat's phrase. Currently, this is a beautiful property located off of Thomas B. Landers, near the Coonamessett River, nearby to other properties also owned by the 300 Committee. The dwelling itself is in good shape, but the outbuildings need some attention. However, they are functional for storage purposes, which is what the 300 Committee intends to do. The lot is just shy of 3 acres. It's 2.96 acres, so just about 130,000 square feet. The existing and proposed lot coverage by structure is 3.55. There's no proposal to alter the structures in any meaningful way, which is well below the 20% that's allowed by right within this district. The lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking does increase slightly, mostly due to the increased parking, which goes from 3.85% to 5.82%. Again, far below the 40% that is allowed by right within an agricultural district. The property is zoned agricultural A. The proposal is relatively straightforward. There are really no significant changes to the exterior and only minimal changes to the interior. They seek to use the space as offices and occasional meeting space for their philanthropic institution, which is a use that's allowed by special permit. The existing use of this property as a single-family home requires only 2 parking spaces. Our proposed use, calculated as office use, requires 9.38. I haven't figured out how to do 0.38 of a space, so let's call it 10. We have proposed 13 spaces, including a handicap accessible space. Other than a sloped walk for handicap access, there's not really any other changes to the exterior. There's no changes proposed to the existing landscaping. The existing landscaping serves the location and intent appropriately. It's really beautiful. So they want to maintain the current field and landscaping to preserve the rural character of the agricultural district, which is really in line with the mission of the 300 Committee. And whereas there's no change, and this isn't a redevelopment of the property, just a change in use, we did not have a landscape plan prepared and would request that the board waive that requirement. In an effort not to disturb the property more than it needs to be, there have been some very few changes proposed to the existing driveway. We understand the driveway is slightly smaller at 22 feet. However, given the topography of this property, we don't believe this should present any sort of an issue for emergency access. And the same is true for the parking aisle width, which is, I believe, 22 feet as well. While it is a two-way aisle, there's only 1 row of parking, and that turning area would be flush with the surrounding grass behind it. We did note that the engineering questioned the distance for parking space number 1 on the, I guess, the far east of the property. That is actually 6.1 feet from the side yard line. They questioned as to whether or not it was closer than 5 feet at 6.1, so there's no issue there. And there was a question as to whether or not there's going to be a sign. The committee would like to eventually have a sign. We haven't quite gotten there yet. It would be in connection with the existing millstone at the front of the property, and we'll be happy to come back to either the board or the planner for administrative review on that when they are prepared to proceed, in addition to the regular sign permitting process. We believe that this project meets the criteria under special permit review. We'd be happy to address any questions that you have. I think it is, like I said, a relatively straightforward proposal. It is an almost ideal property for the mission of the 300 Committee and allows them to be located centrally to all of their properties throughout the area while maintaining really what is a beautiful piece of property.
Thanks, Kevin. Does any
I was supposed to
board-
let Jess do a little preamble. Do you mind if I let Jess just say a few words?
Of course. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you, Kevin. Hi, I'm Jessica Rittenauer, Executive Director of the 300 Committee Land Trust, and Mike Duffany and I are here this evening representing the 300 Committee staff and Board of Directors. I just have a few comments just framing why we're doing this. As you are aware, the 300 Committee has been working on land conservation projects in Falmouth since 1985 as a nonprofit land trust. Much of our work has been in partnership with the town. So for 40 years, we've worked to preserve more than 2,500 acres of open space. This initiative, backed by our Board of Directors, is to create a permanent home for the 300 Committee in Falmouth. We're continuing land protection work, land stewardship work. This facility will be a really essential component of our stewardship program. And the location where it's located in town, adjacent to the Coonamessett Greenway, and so many of our major properties, such as Shallow Pond Woodlands, provides nice access for the stewardship of land. Outreach and education is a major program area as well. This work will be continuing for many years to come. So this project really review is a new chapter in our mission, deepening our roots in Falmouth, part of our pathway to permanence. The site was selected because of its rural character. We searched for 3 years, and we looked at many different properties in Falmouth. The goal here overall is to preserve the setting. It's a beautiful building, beautiful field area. We are stewards, we are caretakers of land. So I think that's going to conclude my remarks, but we are pleased to have the opportunity to own and manage this property, and we think it will be a valuable resource for the community as we continue our conservation mission. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica.
Let her go first, she's better at this than I am.
She lives it every day.
I do also just want to comment, I know the public comment that was made said, you know, we know there's more coming. This is what we're asking. Forever's a long time. I'm not going to promise forever, but this is what we're asking.
Do you want to add to it, or? Well, that comes a little bit later. The board will take part now and see where we want to go. Anybody else? Yes, Bob?
Yeah, so basically, you're just looking to put some gravel down for places to park.
But because we're increasing the parking need, because of the
Right.
change in use,
Right.
we're before you tonight. But that's really the only change we're making to the exterior of this, and we're adding a handicap ramp.
What's there now? Is it just grass or?
You can see, I'll use my mouse here. You can see here, there is, Tom, is this reflecting what's here? So the question is just what's there now? Is this just grass here?
No, that's all. I'm Tom Bunker of BSS Design, for the record. Actually, I think we're not proposing to put gravel down at the moment. There's gravel there. What Kevin is pointing at is all a gravel surface, and all the parking spaces shown on the plan are gravel. It's just the backing and turning area is grass at the moment, which is perfectly firm to back and drive out on.
John?
What is going to be any deed restrictions on this property for future use, for development or
There's no.
agricultural? I mean,
So it is zoned agricultural. We are going to be requesting a special permit from the zoning board. So any changes to the use in the property would have to go through the permitting process. I don't think there's any intent to place a deed restriction on the property now. Like I said, forever's a long time. But the 300 Committee's mission is not to, it would not be cohesive with the 300 Committee's mission to develop this property.
would it be against their mission to do some farming there?
I'd have to discuss that with Ms. Ridenour. I think that there's probably a lot of potential uses of that field area, but right now their intent is to preserve it in the condition it's in.
Okay, thank you.
Jim?
I think it's important to understand the scope. The parking and paving allowance is 40, and they're asking for 5?
Mhm.
That's pretty minimal impact. We've seen, 10 times that request.
It's an increase of only, let's see,
2%?
less than 2,000 square feet. And again, it's not adding new paving, it's just delineating spaces in the already existing developed area. Right now, you don't count the parking even though the gravel's there because it's not required. But with the requirement, you count it.
And its current use is, it's grazing area, isn't that?
The field is.
Yeah, that.
And the
I mean,
field's
if
gonna
that-
remain as is.
Yeah, I mean, so it kind of is like a farm except for animals.
Yeah, yeah. I drive by it every day.
Paul?
I have no comment.
Pam? Okay, I've got a couple of questions.
Mhm.
You say that the parking spaces are already gravel.
Mhm.
Why were they already gravel if that's a house? I don't know, I'm curious.
That's how it's been. That's how the property's been laid out by the Zelinski family.
Ah, okay.
I'm sure they park cars there, but there was no requirement for parking, so it didn't
Okay.
count.
They didn't show it as parking. It was
Right.
just big gravel area.
And obviously, you're not gonna stripe gravel. How are you gonna delineate the spaces?
I think when I say delineate, we have to show in the plan that we have the required parking area.
Okay.
I mean, by
Says,
space.
okay, are you gonna put concrete, whatever they're
I
called?
mean, I've seen people put down the white boards. I don't think that's the intent, or I don't think there's a need for it, but,
No, it's just to make sure that the width
Yeah.
and the length is correct. and
Yeah.
For the number of vehicles
The
that are gonna be
numbers
there. That's all.
are right for the, okay. I am curious, what kind of ornamental tree is there and why it has to be taken out? If you look, it's just, right up by the building.
oh, that's coming up because of the handicap ramp
I
that's going in.
wondered if that's why.
Yeah, so
too
this
bad.
here, this curved area where the mouse is right now, that is to be, the notation is, proposed 4-foot wide sloped walk with stone surface, dropping 12 inches over 30 feet, no handrails are required. So this would provide the handicap access to the handicap parking space.
Okay, that answers my question. Too bad you can't dig it up and plop it down a little further away, but depending upon what kind it is and how big it is. So I don't have any further questions. I don't think the board does, and let's go to the public and see what, you can come up now, ma'am, and
I'm Liz Katapovic, and I live in the neighborhood. My biggest question is, what is this? Maybe it's a zoning question. Is this request for office space? Is this an institutional building? Is this, are people from the public going to be coming in? Is it assembly? What are they asking for?
Kevin, I think you can tell her.
So the 300 committee falls within definition of a philanthropic institution, and they intend to use this as their office space, as well as storage space for some of their facilities in the existing garage and barn, shed, whatever you want to call it. Those will be used to store some of the stewardship supplies that they have. The intent is that it's to be used as office space for their staff. There may be an occasional board meeting that's held there, but that would be at most once a month, and it would not really be a place of public assembly. I don't think the public would be going there on any sort of regular basis.
Does that satisfy you? Thank you. Jim?
Just to confirm, Kevin, once a special permit, any changes they make is a special permit again. So there's no way that they can start doing something else without triggering the whole process over
Would
again.
need to modify whatever special permit
Whatever
may or may not be
conditions are,
granted.
you gotta come back to this board. Actually, you have to go back to the ZBA. Is that where?
We'd have to come back to the ZBA, and depending on what other changes they sought to make, we'd have to
We're
come
really
back here as
doing
well.
the site plan here, right?
Yeah.
And the special permit is by the
Zoning board.
ZBA.
We
So
will
the
be
use
back
things
before
all go
you.
with the ZBA, and we do driveways and parking.
Yeah. We'll be back before you on May 9th for the front yard parking.
I just, thank you.
We're required to get a special permit for, this is considered parking in the front yard, despite the fact it's 400 feet away from the street, because anything streetward of the building is considered front yard. So any parking located in front of that building requires a special permit from the planning board.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions from the board?
We'll just make note of one comment from the engineering referral, and I believe Kevin already touched upon it. 24-foot width is required for the parking drive aisle. I'm assuming the board is okay with 22, although we just want to make sure for our records.
Well, it's
We
been
can write that in.
presented as it's just grass, so there's no obstruction there to keep somebody back for 24 feet.
So 22 is okay with the board? Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, well, we don't close site plan reviews, and
So, Melinda just reminded me of two things. One, we still haven't received a referral from our fire department, so we will get on that. We will make sure that we receive that before the 9th meeting. And in talking about that, I've forgotten the other one. Landscaping. So Kevin indicated that they're going to be asking for a waiver. We just ask that that be submitted in writing. That's all.
Certainly can do that. And we don't go before the zoning board until May 25th.
Perfect.
So I can submit that request by email tomorrow.
Great.
So we'll see you again on the 9th. And
Can I make a request, suggestion?
of course,
Would it be possible to have a positive motion drafted for the 9th?
that's what we would tend to do because we haven't had any negative comments. So, you know, depending upon what the fire department says, if they say, we can't get down there.
Yep.
But I think we have,
Barring that, perhaps.
yeah. Okay,
And on the 9th is the special permit for the front yard parking as well. So
are
there'll be.
we likely to be able to act on that? 'Cause- Okay, so you'd have that drafted as well,
We
because
can,
we're
yep.
indicating there's no problem with front yard
Site
parking.
plan, and we have a special permit, and zoning has their special permit.
Correct.
On the 25th.
So there's 2 special permits and 1 site plan.
Yeah.
Correct.
And this might be the rare dual application that doesn't get bounced back and forth if we can
Yeah,
line
just
this
get it
all
right
up.
through, yeah.
But because of what
Right.
our special permit is, and we've already discussed it tonight,
Yeah.
we should be able to see it and pass it.
Right.
The decision.
Yeah, I just have a question.
Of course, Mr.
It's
Chairman.
a very large lot. Are there future plans for development or doing some in this area?
Again, it would
Herd
be,
of sheep maybe or something like that?
it
It's
would,
already allowed.
it would be,
It has
yeah.
been sheep. I thought I had testimony, there was a goat running around.
Yeah, it would be
Have a herd of goats
antithetical to the 300 Committee's mission to develop this property in any way that didn't preserve sort of the agricultural and natural aspects of it.
This is Lot 2 in the rectangular area, and then the area going east and west, is that Lot 1?
I think it's just Lot 2 on a plan of
Whole thing is
record.
Lot 2.
So I think this whole thing is Lot 2 on a plan of record. When it was subdivided, it was probably Lot 1, Lot 2, Lot 3. So this just remains designated as Lot 2.
And the intent is just preserve that property. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll
Thank
see you
you.
on the 9th.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time this evening.
Okay, moving on, we have committee reports, and I think you all have something from Paul in front of you. Paul?
That was pretty good.
Your email said it was for tonight.
You aren't prepared?
I can talk about it, yeah, I'm waiting for them to leave.
I know.
Thank you. I think there's a little confusion here, and maybe it's my fault. At the April 25th meeting, I presented a lot of things,
Today's April 25th.
Madam Chair.
and the question came up, sorry.
Are you continuing the hearing on the solar farm out on Coonessa Pond?
And the what?
The solar
We've
farm.
heard there was a hearing tonight on the Coonessa.
It's going to the Cape Cod Commission, it'll be back in 6 months. We didn't even have an open meeting on it, we just kicked it off to the commission.
Okay.
You'll get invited to come back again.
Oh, goody. Hello, Patty.
Night.
Yeah. We talked about this in April 25th,
Today's April 25th.
and the intent was that, do we need to include this as part of the minutes?
Paul, today is April 25th.
Right.
So I wanted stuff from March 28th.
I thought this was the one from March 28th.
Okay. I don't know,
Yeah,
but there was
This is the one from
confusion,
March
so I just.
28th, the one to 25th, I didn't give you,
Okay.
okay?
Well,
At any rate, we've talked about this, the enclosures here, and the important thing here, I think, is the, what was done in New York, New Jersey on the offshore wind farms, how they were trying to consolidate the pipelines coming in. And even though their report says they mention New England, they don't really touch about New England. But I think before anything starts getting approved, all these pipelines coming in, there's 9 parcels out there, and all of them are going to want a landfall, perhaps in Falmouth or someplace else. So I was just providing this information to see what was done by this group from Cambridge in the New York, New Jersey area. They do mention New England, but they don't really touch upon the wind farms off the vineyard at all. Okay, so this information, I thought, goes back to the
March.
earlier one.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that's what, there was a little
And
confusion.
then I had another one for today, but I didn't want to bring it up again because we've talked about it enough times.
Okay.
But basically, at the last Water Quality Management Committee meeting, there was another presentation showing what recommendations they're going to make. They endorsed the plan to move forward, and then we're going to make a presentation to the select board. Now, I can get that to you if you want that part of it.
Sure, yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is town meeting turned down the funding for the Pescott area. I'm not sure what that means. They've been working on that for about 5 years now, and it's coming along. And they approved the one part, and the funding's not there. So, you know, logically, we could be facing a moratorium on building if we don't have the wastewater systems in place. So that would have a big impact on town. What the committee's going to do next, I'm not quite sure, but they'll have to revisit this again. It was set up to move forward, and the funding's not there at this time. And there has not been a water quality meeting since the town meeting, so I can't tell you any more about it. The next one, I can tell you more about it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Paul.
Are there any other committee reports? Okay. Planning Department report.
Two brief items. They both deal with the zoning bylaw recodification effort. As you know, the Attorney General approved our second attempt at recodification with 6 edits. I won't go through those edits. I think we've done that before in the past. But the report from our department is that those edits have been completed. The document itself has been revised, and copies are available both at the planning office but also at the town clerk's office. We're also publicizing that in the newspaper. And so that part of what we're required to do is complete. And now phase 2 efforts are ongoing. So our zoning bylaw working group met actually today, this morning, and we discussed extensively Article 10, the previous version of non-conforming structures, uses, and lots. And so the working group is putting together a list of amendments that they are planning to bring forward to town meeting this November. So that may be one of them if we can get all of those final edits ready to go. And then, of course, we bring them to the planning board for your approval, and then obviously to a public hearing for the public to weigh in on them. So more to come on that. And as you remember from last year, around that time, we would be opening a public hearing sometime in early September. So we don't want to wish the summer away, but we're excited to bring some zoning amendments forward for this town meeting. So we'll keep you updated as time goes by. But that's essentially what I have for you this evening. One additional item, because it's come up in the past, is the conversion bylaw. Yes. Or the conversion of a dwelling, I should say, that's located within the use table. And so in 3 different locations, in the business district, in the public use district, and the single residence districts. What we tried to do is put together sort of a document that gives you an idea as to what the existing language looks like now, and what edits you might want to consider in red lines, and then some questions, some leading questions for the board. And it seems a bit backward, but because it was brought up with the board, and I say backward in this way, traditionally what we would do is we would bring these edits through the working group. The working group would sort of discuss them, talk about them, and then bring forward to the planning board some potential edits for you to consider. We're sort of doing this one in reverse because it came up as a planning board discussion item. So our intent, with your permission, is to essentially have you provide comments, bring it back to the working group, see what they think, bring it back to you before it eventually goes to November town meeting, if you're comfortable with it.
Jed, I'd like to suggest that the board really study this and be prepared to discuss it at the May 9th meeting, because the working group is going to meet again on May 24th.
Right.
So that will give us enough time, if the planning board has some changes that they would like to see in this, to get it as final as we could before we bring it to the working group.
Yeah, and as you can see in those 3 districts in the use table, the language is essentially the same. but it varies a little. And so examples of that are, in the business and public use district, we use the word dwelling, and in the single residence district, we say lot for some reason. So it's not dwelling and lot, it's just lot, whereas the other two districts, we're talking about the dwelling itself being in existence as of January 1st, 1980. And so we want to try to drill down on why was that difference there? Was it intentional, or was it unintentional, and it was just an oversight, and we just missed it? Another example is, in the language itself, it says the Board of Appeals determines that the size of the dwelling and the lot are suitable for the remodeling. And so, again, just to be consistent, some of the language that we've presented here is that it be suitable for the conversion, because again, this is a conversion of a dwelling. And so those are just things that you may want to just take home and take a look at. The planning staff will look into that January 1st, 1980 date, as you folks have already identified, figure out exactly why that date was put in the way it was. And then the idea of, there was a second item, I'm just missing it here. I think it was really just the difference in the language in the single residence district. As you can see in that table, it's much more extensive than it is, for example, in the public use district.
I think Jim would rather see that date go away from his prior comments.
I've met with them today, and
Right.
they have identified roughly what the impact would be if we moved that date, and I was arbitrarily picked the year 2000, and how many more homes, and I asked them to look at, because a 1,000-square-foot house can't be converted into 4 units, but maybe a 2,500-square-foot house, they'd be small. But I wanted them to identify a threshold. And lastly, I wanted to have a discussion with this board. Is it a possibility that we could actually have a small amount of changes to the outside or improvement in the footprint that would encourage us to get more housing? Because and I don't know what that would be. Maybe it's a percentage or 500 feet or some number that I'd like our staff to come up with, this would make it easier for people. And let's face it, this is the last piece of low-hanging fruit that they put together for that great grand housing study we did, 8 years ago? Mm-hmm. And this is the last piece, and I can tell you, in my experience, it stalled. This used to happen when I first started happening. They were happening off Mill Road, they were happening off Scranton and Clinton. There's a house that was there. That was in the 80s.
Yeah.
Nothing's happened that I recall since then. So what do we need to do? Make it a little bit easier? I don't know. I was looking for ideas.
Well, your idea of putting a little bit more square footage on is so that people could get an entranceway.
Yeah, but or maybe there's just one more room. You know what I mean? Just a design that we would have to approve. Mm-hmm. Not arbitrarily, go put it anywhere you want. They would have to come up with the design, we have to know why. But to allow, now maybe I'm wrong. I'm assuming the reason why no one's doing it is because the bylaw's too tough and they can't get along with that clause that says no changes.
Well, isn't part of it that it had to be deed restricted? Wasn't that part of?
No, they don't have to be their market
No.
rate.
This one wasn't, it was what Bobby Richards brought to us,
Okay.
what she does, that has to be deed
Right.
restricted.
But to get the two that jump out at mind, and I think you'll both know them if you think about it. And in fact, they're both yellow.
Yeah.
It is one off Mill Road. There's a great big, it used to be the Emmons Estate, it was known as.
Yeah.
And the other one is on the corner of Clinton and Scranton, and it's a 4-unit big yellow house. And I remember in the 80s, I watched it happen. I said, what are they doing? So I remember those two. I don't really call that many that's happened since, so I was assuming that it's just too hard to do. Well, I know another thing we have to take into consideration too that makes it very cost prohibitive. Building codes have changed. And I think the biggest code that we've come into is I think as soon as you go to 4 units, over 3,
Sprinklers, yeah.
you have to use iron pipe, sprinkler fire protection. There's a whole myriad. I remember when I was building, I only did 3s to stay under the threshold. So I don't know if that's still the threshold, but I believe that The 4 is a tough, it changes all the codes.
It's more than two.
Now it's more than 2?
More than two.
It used to be 3, it used to be, so it's more than 2. So they have hurdles that are significant, so I just wanted to bring those up.
We can offer it, but there may be no takers.
It was just an idea.
Now, do we also set a requirement for the number of units it would have to be, so you prevent somebody from taking a two-story house and just dividing it in half? So it would be
No, it says up to 4.
50.
The bylaw currently right now says up to 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, or 4.
But it has to be more than just one other?
No. If I recall, it just says up to 4.
Because what I was thinking about this today, and, okay, say you have a colonial, typical colonial. You want to make an entire apartment out of the second floor. How does that sit with the accessory apartment bylaw, where we've only allowed people 40% of the floor area, or 800 square feet? Because I could see that
Well,
happening.
this would be separate ownership.
It'd
That's
be
a different animal.
condominium.
It's a condo.
Yeah,
It's 2 different owners, where accessory is 1 owner.
right.
So you have an accessory to a main
But aren't some
structure.
of these single owners, like on Palmer Ave, with the apartments in them, aren't they?
But they're renting, they still own the whole
Right,
parcel.
right.
They haven't,
So somebody would also, if they just took the example I gave, and they rented out the second floor,
they could do that now. If it was built before 1980, that's allowed by the
yeah.
current.
Yeah,
That's-
because I'm just
Right.
thinking of the different neighborhoods where this could happen, and how that would square with the accessory apartment bylaw. Where some people might say, geez, if I could have gone 50%, I would have gone 50%, because I ended up going under 800 square feet because I could only go to 40%.
Well, I believe the difference is you have 1 owner, and now, an accessory apartment, they own both places.
Right,
And these are 2 separate owners, two totally different dwellings, different owners, the whole thing. So there's no requirement that the owner has to live in one and
Right.
be in the other.
Right.
It's 2 different owners from the get-go, when you make it a condo.
Well, probably this will come out in our discussion as we
Yeah.
go on too, because hopefully we'll get somebody coming, somebody's coming in.
See, I'm just looking at them as rentals, not ownership.
Just a form of ownership, yeah. But for some reason, no one's been using the conversion bylaw for a long time.
Yeah.
And we don't really know why.
No idea. No idea. I mean, I think at the very least, you'd want to have consistent language in each one of those,
Yeah,
those areas.
should start there.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely a starting point.
Are there any future agenda items that anybody wants
I
to
got
see?
something.
Oh,
I can mention 2. One is, if you look at East Falmouth, particularly around the fairgrounds, we have solar panels. Every time I go by, there's more and more of those. Is there any listing of the solar panels been approved in town? And those that are pending? Because there seems to be a limit to tying into N-Star. And I don't know what that limit is. This new development that's coming in is gonna be a huge project. And,
I can tell you
not
a
only
little bit,
taking
having done
land
one.
out of service, out of potential use, but we're covering the entire East Falmouth with solar panels.
When we did the landfill, we being the EDIC, we had to spend $100,000, or 90-something thousand dollars upfront to do a network study, to pay the utility company to engineer the connection and figure out how to do it. So we had to put that up front and get them pay for it. And then the trick we did is when we leased it, we made that the first rent payment. Whoever leased it had to pay us back the $100,000. But there's a study that to answer your question, Paul, there's a study that the utility company requires to tie in. It's big money.
But we keep approving all these solar panels. I don't know what that does to the system.
Well, they have, my point is,
I hear
they
what you're saying.
make the applicant do the engineering before they give it an okay. Called a network study?
The other thing I wanted to mention, I watched the select board meeting Monday night because they were talking about that large development on Sandwich Road. And I don't know if you've seen that or not, but the proponent kept trying to get the board to approve what they wanted to do, endorse where they're going, and the board said, we need more information. And the big issue they were talking about was wastewater. And the developer said, well, we can work with the town and work this thing out. And they're saying, well, we need that information up front. So they were pushing back. And at one point, the guy said, well, we could go 40B. And you hear groans from everybody in the
Wait a
audience.
second, aren't they doing the 40B?
That's what I thought.
That's what I thought it was.
That is a 40B. So that, what kind of, you can't put 800 units on
Well,
those
I don't know
acres
how-
out.
They didn't talk about how many units. Originally it was 300, and then 300, and then 300 more.
But
So I don't know if that's still in the
it's a
game.
40B to begin with. Whoever said threatened to 40B is like, is that mean, instead of being a friendly 40B, it's gonna be?
I think perhaps that was what they were trying to say.
But, you know, the select board pushed back on it. And this guy kept saying, well, you know, we're trying to work with you, we met with all these people, we need an endorsement to move forward. And they were not buying that.
Because if they can't take care of the wastewater, that's a health issue. And the Board of Health can kill it.
Could we get a
My
list of the
understanding.
solar panels in town? We find out what's really been approved? I mean, we don't really know.
I know of two. I know there's the fairgrounds and, I forget the, yes, the
Every time I drive
Borrego.
by, there's another array. Every time I drive by, there's another array, or Bucksbury Road and everything else. You go out there all the time, there's a lot of them.
Well, we created the solar overlay district for that.
Right.
I read something this morning, and I can't tell you where I read it, because it's been a long day already, that Walmart is anticipating putting solar arrays over their parking lots, and it's a twofold benefit: electricity, but it also decreases the heat that goes out into our universe. And so they are actively considering, like I said, I can't tell you where, it could have been on my cell phone, it could, whatever.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn, it's 8 o'clock.
Really?
There's a ball game on, Celtics are on.
Anybody want to second that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.